The streets were Sammy's domain, a gritty, unforgiving world, where the stray cat had learned to survive by his wits alone. Day in and day out, he prowled the alleys and scavenged through dumpsters, his instincts honed to a razor's edge as he dodged the constant threats that lurked in the shadows. Sammy was a scrappy, resilient Tom. His tattered tabby coat, a testament to the harsh realities he faced. His vivid green eyes, once full of wonder, now held a hardened edge, the product of years spent fending for himself on these unforgiving city streets. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the decrepit buildings, Sammy crept toward a familiar dumpster, his whiskers twitching as he caught the faint scent of discarded food. Carefully, he hopped up onto the edge, peering over the side as he assessed the contents. A scrap of meat, still half edible, caught his eye, and he wasted no time snatching it up in his jaws, tearing into it hungrily. Just as Sammy was about to take another bite, a sudden noise from nearby made him freeze, his body tensing as he scanned the alley for the source of the disturbance. A stray dog, its formatted and its eyes wild, came barreling towards him, its powerful jaws snapping dangerously close to Sammy's tail. Panicked, Sammy leapt from the dumpster, his paws pounding the pavement as he darted through the maze of alleys, the dog's snarls echoing behind him. He weaved through discarded garbage and ducked under the occasional parked car, his heart pounding in his chest as he desperately sought refuge. Finally, Sammy spotted a small gap between two crumbling buildings, just large enough for him to squeeze through. Without hesitation, he dove inside, the dog's frustrated barks fading as he put distance between himself and the threat. Panting heavily, Sammy crouched in the narrow space, his sides heaving. He was no stranger to such brushes with danger, but each one left him more exhausted and wary than the last. The constant struggle for survival was wearing him down, and despite his resilience, a part of him longed for something more. As the last rays of daylight faded, Sammy emerged cautiously from his hiding spot, his keen senses alert for any further threats. He knew these streets better than anyone, and he used that knowledge to his advantage, navigating the urban landscape with a practiced ease born of necessity. Sammy's ears perked up as he caught the faint sound of footsteps nearby. Instinctively, he tensed, preparing to flee, but as the figure approached, he saw not another stray dog or hostile human. Instead, it was an elderly woman, her steps slow and deliberate as she walked along the sidewalk, a small bag clutched in her hand. Sammy watched her warily, his body still poised to run at the first sign of danger. But as the woman drew closer, he noticed the gentle expression on her face, and the way her eyes seemed to soften as she looked around the alley. Intrigued, Sammy took a few tentative steps forward, his tail twitching back and forth. The woman paused, her gaze falling upon Sammy, and a small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. Slowly, she extended her hand, holding it out to Sammy in an inviting gesture. Sammy hesitated, his instincts warning him to be cautious, but there was something about this woman that made him feel a glimmer of trust. Edging closer, Sammy sniffed the woman's hand, his whiskers brushing against her skin. She remained still, allowing him to investigate at his own pace, and after a moment, Sammy cautiously leaned forward, his rough tongue gently licking the woman's fingers. The woman's smile widened, and she began to speak in a soft, soothing voice. "Hello, little one," she murmured, her words barely above a whisper. "You look like you could use a friend." Sammy's ears perked up at the sound of her voice, and his body relaxed ever so slightly. There was a warmth and kindness in her tone that he had not encountered in the harsh, indifferent world of the streets. Day by day, the woman continued to visit the alley, bringing small offerings of food and slowly, carefully, earning Sammy's trust. At first, he would dart away at the first sign of her approach, his instincts still on high alert. But gradually, he began to recognize her familiar presence, and the sight of her would fill him with a curious sense of anticipation. One afternoon, as Sammy was resting in a patch of sun, the woman approached him with a gentle smile. "Would you like to come home with me, dear?" she asked, her voice soft and inviting. Sammy tensed, his heart pounding in his chest. Home, the very word held such foreign, tantalizing promise, yet it also stirred a deep-seated wariness within him. For so long, the streets had been his only home, a harsh but familiar landscape where he had learned to survive. But as Sammy gazed into the woman's kind eyes,
he found himself drawn to the warmth and security they promised. Tentatively, he rose to his feet, taking a few steps toward her. The woman remained still, allowing Sammy to make the choice, and after a moment's hesitation, he slowly approached her, his tail held high in a tentative gesture of trust. Carefully, the woman reached down, her fingers gently running through Sammy's matted fur. "That's it, my dear," she murmured, her voice filled with tenderness. "You're safe now." With those words, Sammy felt a weight lift from his shoulders, and he allowed the woman to scoop him up into her arms. As she carried him away from the alley, Sammy felt a sense of trepidation, but also a glimmer of hope that perhaps, after all this time, he had finally found a place to call home.
Took a few